Uh, Normally, I do talks around the subject that I spend a lot of time with, right? The things that I'm working heavily in and stuff like that. Today is going to be very different, right? I literally spent an hour in what I'm going to talk about today, right? So bear with me. This is just an idea. I did not go deep into it yet. We can discuss it and see whether this makes sense, right? So quick introduction. This is me. I work for Upbound. We're a company behind Crossplane. You will see Crossplane later, among other things. I have a Twitter account. I belong to some groups. I have books and podcasts and videos. It doesn't matter. What does matter is that I'm very, very, very much into Kubernetes, right? Kubernetes is the thing I do. I mean, I do other things, but Kubernetes is my main focus for a very, very, no, not very long time. For a while, right? Doesn't exist for a long time. Anyways, so what do we do with Kubernetes, right? Now, majority of us, when I say what is Kubernetes, majority of you is going to say something along the lines, it's a thingy that allows me to run applications as containers in a cluster, right? Or something along that direction, right? Now, and that's absolutely true. We can run stateless or stateful applications in Kubernetes. Who is using Kubernetes here? Okay, the rest of you, get the heck out. I don't understand what you're doing here. Okay, be ashamed. Anyways, so if you want to run stateless or stateful applications, we do that in Kubernetes. That's what everybody knows. Now, what is a little bit less known is that if you want to run like serverless applications, you can do that in Kubernetes as well. That's very common now. We have many, many projects for that. One of them being Knative, my favorite right now, but there are many, many others. You can manage infrastructure with Kubernetes. Now, this is usually the part where people freak out because, hey, it's about applications. It's not about applications because even if you're running applications in Kubernetes, you're managing infrastructure whether you know it or not, right? Any of you who raised your hand when you said you're using Kubernetes, do you define ingress controllers? If you do, then you're managing external load balancers. Do you define storage? Again, that's something outside. Kubernetes has been managing infrastructure for a very, very long time. Now, what we're trying to do with Crossplane, again, open source project, CSCF, I'm not selling you anything, it's free. We're trying to take Kubernetes to the next level, meaning that we are bringing controllers and custom resource definitions and all the jazz. You will see part of it today that allows you to use Crossplane, convert Kubernetes to be a control plane to manage stuff. Whatever the stuff is, I don't care what the stuff is, you should be using Kubernetes first and foremost as a control plane to manage things, and whether those things are VMs or containers or databases or anything else, does not really matter. Now, the reason why I'm so obsessed with Kubernetes, and we can now argue whether there is a better alternative for you and things like that, right? But what really makes Kubernetes special is that it is a unified API that has the biggest ecosystem ever seen in this industry, right? Almost vast majority of innovation happening right now is happening on top of Kubernetes, right? Whatever you need, if it's security, again, new projects in Kubernetes. If it's policies, Kubernetes. If it's service meshes, Kubernetes. If it's whatever it is, most of the companies are trying to innovate on top of Kubernetes, which makes perfect sense for a simple reason that Kubernetes gives us a layer of abstraction and unification that doesn't exist anywhere else, right? Otherwise, me as a vendor would need to figure out how could this work in on-prem or Azure or AWS. Madness. Anyways, it has a huge ecosystem. So if I want to do whatever I want to do, I can do it easier in Kubernetes than anywhere else. You want GitOps? You can use Argo CD or Flux or Rancher Fleet or Cup Controller. Now, if any of you thinks that there is a fifth product that can do GitOps, please let me know, because we're going to have a huge fight. Huge fight. If you say GitHub Actions, I'm going to freak out and go leave. Anyways, you want to manage policies, again, it's easier in Kubernetes than anything else. You can use Caverno, you can use OPA Gatekeeper, you can use .3, and since the latest version of Kubernetes, it's only even baked in. It's Kubernetes validation admission policies, I think. Anyways, observability, and so on and so forth. Now, what I'm interested in today, and again, this is a POC, proof of concept, 1 hour spent. Don't expect a lot. What I try to do for this talk is to try to figure out how I can implement observability and observe anything happening anywhere. Doesn't matter whether it's Azure or AWS or Google Cloud or on-prem or anything else, from inside Kubernetes, right? That's my goal today. Very quick POC. So I'm going to skip this part because, and this is now going to get very tricky for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm going to do live coding while holding the microphone. So I don't know how that is going to work. It's going to be tricky, right? And I'm going to have to kneel. So I'm not religious. This is not me praying to somebody. Just me adapting to the situation, right? So let's go to Grafana and see what I set up in advance. Something fell down. There we go. Do you hear me now? You don't. Doesn't matter. Anyways, so I went to Grafana over here, and I created a very simple dashboard. Again, remember, this is a 1 hour POC. This is not working for me, so I'm gonna put it here. Anyways, you hear me well, right? Yeah, it's a small room. Okay, cool. So I created a very small dashboard just to demonstrate what we can do. And that dashboard contains the list of all the clusters I have. I did not want to spend money on you guys, so one cluster only. You can see that it is up and running, and no databases right now. Right, so we're going to change that. I need my tablet. Give me a second. There we go. Okay, here we go. Cool. So what I'm going to do first is deploy an application, right? Application like any other. It's going to be an application in Kubernetes. It's going to have, let me show you what it's going to have. That's easier, right? Now, if you're used to colors and stuff like that, you're not going to see colors much today. I like terminals. So what I'm going to deploy, and you all said that you use Kubernetes, so there is no excuse for you to not understand what I'm doing. I have a customized directory. I'm using customized today. And I'm going to show you a couple of files, nothing really fancy, something that absolutely everybody who works with Kubernetes knows. I'm going to deploy an application, a Kubernetes deployment, nothing special. This is the most standard thing you can do. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is going to be slightly more special, right? And if you used Crossplane before? No? Okay, be ashamed. Stateful Google. So I'm going to do this. Now, ignore the first part. This part is the part that matters, right? So what I'm going to do is, I can pick this up, is create something called SQL claim. Now, this thing does not exist. You cannot get it anywhere because it's not part of anything. This is me. Somebody in my organization creating a completely new abstraction in Kubernetes called the SQL claim that contains all the things that people care about when they want to deploy an application, and none of the things that should be done, but you don't care, but majority of developers do not care about, right? So I'm saying here, this is completely custom, right? Doesn't come out of the box anywhere. I will allow my developers to create something called SQL claim. I will allow them to choose through labels where they want to manage database. In this case, I'm saying Google and Postgres, right? It could be Azure, AWS, the interface is going to be the same. What's going to happen in the background is going to be completely different. But for them, it's going to be the same. And parameters like, hey, version 13 and size of the database small. I have no idea what small means in this case in Google Cloud, but the system will figure it out, right? So, I'm going to apply this, right? So I'm going to create that deployment, and I'm going to create a we call it Crossplane composition that will create a database in what I showed in Google, in this case, right? So namespace is a team. This is my team, simulation of my team. I'm going to apply whatever is defined in customize, using customize in the directory, customize overlays, stateful Google directory, right? Stuff created in Kubernetes. Now, what's going to happen is that I created stuff in Kubernetes cluster, and now think of Kubernetes cluster as not being some thingy that runs containers, but thingy that can be extended to do whatever you want. And one of the things that I can do is fire up Lens and say, there we go. Anybody using Lens? You like Lens? Only one? Everybody else loves terminals, right? I'm the one. I never used Lens in my. I used it twice in my life. I'm the only reason why I'm adding Lens here is because I thought that you like it. That's the only reason why it's here. I don't even know how it works. How do I add cluster here? I honestly don't know. Here, Devil's Toolkit. There we go. Connecting. I made a huge mess over here. Sorry for that. There we go. Right? Now, you can do typical things in Lens, browse Kubernetes cluster. You can say, hey, there is my application. In the namespace, what did we say? A team, here is my application. 0 pods are running right now. There is a reason for that, because the database is not yet running. It needs a secret. Secret needs to be mounted into application. It will take a couple of more minutes. It's progressing. Cool. Or you can do custom resources and say, if I ever find it, it's somewhere. There was toolkitseries.com. There we go, right? You can see the status of my database straight into as a Kubernetes resource, right? I can see that there is something called, composite cluster. No, wrong one. Wait, database, SQL, right? You can see the status of the resources happening outside Kubernetes. You can see that this is the name. It is synchronized. It is not yet ready. It takes approximately 5 minutes until it becomes ready. And you can observe everything happening anywhere from your Kubernetes cluster, from a management Kubernetes cluster or something like that. Now, see, this is observability meetup, or that's what I understood. You're probably more into Prometheus. You like Prometheus, right? No? Cool. Okay, I thought it would be Datadog crowd or something like that. Okay. Let's find something like this. Okay, right? I can copy and paste because that looks like I know what I'm doing. I don't really. And go to explore and say, hey, this is slow today. Show me, for example, where is it? Code. Show me where, here we go. Show me the statuses of all the resources that are managed by Kubernetes right now. And you run the query, and you can see here that I have a cluster being managed by my Kubernetes cluster. So other cluster being managed by this cluster. You can see that there is a node pool for that cluster, the database instance. Somebody's claiming a cluster, somebody's claiming SQL. There is some Helm release happening inside of that cluster, some objects, databases, users, and so on and so forth, right? All of a sudden, once you connect your infrastructure and everything into that Kubernetes cluster, all the information that you might need in some form or another becomes easily available. Now, for that 1 hour POC, there were a couple of things that I needed to do to make all that work. And those couple of things is this. And if you're familiar with kube state metrics, so when you install Prometheus, some of you raised your hands and you said that you are using Prometheus, right? You're either lying or you don't know that when you install Prometheus operator, it comes out of the box. Very few people know it, but it comes out of the box with something called kube state metrics, meaning that when you install Prometheus, it automatically starts monitoring a certain number of Kubernetes resources and fetching the data, the events from those resources. Now, by default, it does that only for a certain number of resources, but you can extend it. In this case, I extended it by saying, hey, I have something called SQL claim. I extended Kubernetes myself to manage SQL databases. And these are the paths, this is the name, the namespace, this is the metrics that I want you to collect. And then you repeat that for everything that you have in your Kubernetes cluster or that you manage with your Kubernetes cluster. And the other thing that I had to do is this one, to give it permissions, right? Okay, those are the permissions. From now on, you have permissions to monitor those certain resources. Nothing really special, extremely easy. Again, it was 1 hour, not more. Now, you might be saying metrics is not enough, and that's completely valid. And you can say, I would like to know, to have all the logs from everything happening in my cluster. You can certainly do that. You can go to this, and you can select application, and you can select something called, I will find it, K8s event logger. And you can say, find me all the information about the cluster called ATMGK. Let's see what we get, right? Oh, not much information, so a lot of information, but ATMGK, but we're going to extend it to 4 hours, 6 hours, something like that, and then we get more, right? So you have all the metrics you need through events, and those events with Loki and with the project called, what's the name? I forgot. Looks like I know what I'm doing. I don't really. K8s event logger. Yes, K8s event logger. You can export not only the events into Prometheus, but you can also export those events into Loki, which is my choice for logging solution, right? And then all of a sudden you have a situation where your Kubernetes cluster is managing everything. Everything is getting streamed back into that Kubernetes cluster, and you have all the information that you might ever need. Like this is horrible. Let's do this. Because nobody can read this, right? And you never complain that this is too small a resolution. You can say, give me only the messages, and there we go. You know exactly what is happening with your cluster, which wasn't working initially. Anyway, so what I really wanted to do today is to show you, where is it? There's that's the thing, right? What can be done with an ALF, right? Again, a POC, nothing really special, but it's a very good beginning, because if I already have Kubernetes managing everything, if I have all the data streamed into that Kubernetes cluster, from a observability perspective, I have everything I could need or will need, and so on and so forth. So I'm intentionally trying to keep this very short. I don't know how much time I spent, probably 20 minutes. How much more time I have? 20. I intentionally wanted to keep it short because I wanted to do this kind of bi-directional. Ask me anything. I just throw a couple of curveballs. You're Polish, you ask questions, right? Where is what? Tracing. That's interesting. I'm not sure how I would do tracing when infrastructure is concerned. I know perfectly well how to do tracing within applications, right? But for infrastructure, yeah, actually, now when I think about it, yes. If I have an application talking to the database, what is missing over there is to instrument my application with OTel, with OpenTelemetry. Now, I'm using Go for my application. It is running currently. And that means that you cannot be auto-instrument Go. I would need to change a couple of lines. And then, yes, we would have tracing as well. So I don't believe, so you can get tracing through services, but you need to instrument your application code as well, because tracing works through essentially injecting IDs into requests. And if a request comes to your application and then application goes somewhere else without propagating that ID, it will not work, right? So yeah, service mesh helps, but you need to instrument the code of your application one way or another. Now, if it's Node.js or Python, it's very easy. You can instrument it automatically, but languages that compile, you need to add few lines of code into your application. Next time.